First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now. Thank you for joining us. We broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific, and we're on our YouTube channel, we're on all of our apps, and we're on the website, so thanks for being here with us. Today, we're talking about something that's pretty important to everybody in Portland, whether you know it or not. So in November of 2022, ballot measure 26-228 passed, which called for some big changes, not only to how the city of Portland's government is structured, that's powers for the mayor, powers for the city council, all of that is going to be changing up some. There's changes to how we vote. Currently we do, standard voting. That's going to change to ranked choice voting. And also it calls for 4 new geographic districts in the city of Portland from which city council members will be elected. That's a lot right there, but we're going to be talking about the district part in particular and how that's being decided upon. And that is from the Independent Districting Commission. I'll get it all out, I promise. Talking to us right now, we've got Josh Laurente, who is the co-chair of this. That was a lot of districts and mayors and councils that I just said, but it is very important stuff that we're talking about. So, Josh, appreciate you being here with us, as co-chair of this committee. I think to start off, though, continuing on the educational side of it, can you talk about what this committee actually is?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Greg, and hello, Portland. My name is Josh Laurente. As you mentioned, I am the incoming co-chair of the Independent District Commission, and it's a pleasure to be with you today to talk about our work. So the Independent District Commission is a citizen body tasked with adopting a district plan that establishes the city's first ever geographic voting districts for electing members of city council. In this process, we are guided by the voter-approved district criteria, public input, data, community engagement, and deliberations grounded in equity. And our mandate is to divide the city of Portland into 4 geographic voting districts.
And so just for a comparison, how has it previously been handled? Oh, Josh.
Are you talking about how the commission is formed?
Yes, no, I'm sorry. How have those districts previously been handled? We're dividing it into 4 districts. What was it before that? What is it currently?
I follow. So previously, members of city council were elected citywide. So all members of city council represented all Portlanders at all time. And what we are transitioning to is creating 4 geographic voting districts where Portlanders will get to elect up to 3 representatives per district.
And those will be their representatives within that district that they have the power to elect, which is definitely a lot different than how we've been doing it before. It's also expanding to 12 city council members, right, with 3 in each one of these districts.
That is correct. So we are transitioning away from our current model of citywide elections, and we are going to be transitioning towards having a 12-member city council with 3 representatives from each of those 4 districts elected by ranked choice voting.
So looking at this redistricting effort, dividing the city into 4 geographic districts is a pretty monumental change to what compared to what we've had before. So walk us through this process. How are you deciding upon these districts?
That's a very thoughtful question. So, communities know best what their needs are and what issues they face. And in establishing districts will create the opportunity to uplift local leadership and local issues to City Hall. So creating 4 districts is a way for us to improve democratic representation as well as the civic health of our communities, particularly for those who have not traditionally had a voice in city government. So in drawing these districts, we are guided by a set of voter-approved criteria. The first of which is that these districts should be, as nearly as is practicable, contiguous and compact. They have to use existing geographic or political boundaries. They cannot divide communities of common interest. They have to be of relatively equal population, connected by transportation links, and we have to ensure that they don't dilute the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group or favor any political party.
That is a lot of criteria right there. So it can't be just as simple as saying, Southeast Portland, Southwest Portland, traditional, I guess the way that we kind of divide the city up. This is really going into a lot of detail there. So let's kind of tackle each one of these as far as how it is you're deciding upon that. Contiguous, I guess that does at least help a little bit there. But as far as the population, that's got to be a little bit difficult to figure out where those boundaries are. What is the average population per district?
So if you were to divide the city of Portland into 4 districts with equal population, that number would be approximately 163,000 residents per district.
Okay, so 163,000 per district. And I know right now you do have 3 proposals that are out there as far as how these districts could work. And I know we have these maps. I don't know if you want to walk through these. Can I talk about what the criteria are for each one and what the ramifications are of each one of these? Would that be possible?
Absolutely. So I would like to share with you some of the common themes and key differences across the 3 maps that we are sharing with Portlanders to get their feedback on. First, all 3 of these maps uplift representation in East Portland by connecting communities east of 82nd and I-205 in one district. And this also connects the 4 non-Portland public school districts within the same district. A second common theme is that historic albina is preserved in the North Portland district. And this was out of consideration for the history of harm and displacement to our Black communities in North Portland, as well as in recognition of the work being done by folks like Albina Vision and other community leaders to reinvigorate that area. So we really felt it was important that historic albina remained in the hands of North Portland communities to steward the future direction of that part of our city. A third common theme is that each of the maps connects communities on the west side of the Willamette in one district. So one of the criteria that I mentioned earlier is that we have to use existing geographic boundaries, and the Willamette River is perhaps the most defining boundary literally in our city. So with those common themes, I also want to share with you some of the key differences between these maps as well.
Yeah,
so there
absolutely.
are 2 key differences that you'll see across these 3 maps. And the 2 key differences are: what east side communities best connect with the West District to meet that equal population criteria, because west of the river, the population is not sufficient to constitute its own district. So that's the first key difference. And the second difference is how to define the southern border of the North Portland district. So if you look at the Alder map prioritizes neighborhood association boundaries, and it includes the Selwood, Eastmoreland, and Reed neighborhoods with the West District due to similarities in demographics and socioeconomics. And the Alder map also uses neighborhoods along Sandy Boulevard to define the southern border of that North Portland district. Next, if we look at the Cedar map prioritizes transit corridors that bring communities together. So the Cedar map includes the Central East Side Industrial Council District, as well as the Brooklyn and Selwood neighborhoods with the West, because they share 7 bridge connections across the Willamette, as well as bus and MAX connections to the east. And the Cedar map will use Sandy Boulevard from about 37th to 82nd to define the North District's southern border. Lastly, the Maple map, guided by the City of Portland's 2035 Comprehensive Plan, prioritizes keeping the central city together. So the Maple map includes the Kearns, Buckman, and part of the Hosford-Abernathy neighborhoods with the West Side District to keep that central city together. And it uses a combination of both Sandy Boulevard as well as the surrounding neighborhoods to define that border with North Portland.
So those are some pretty complex maps there as far as determining, where that's all going to end up being drawn out. So what are some of the benefits for each one of those? Or I guess, what are the benefits for each person that's in those districts? Why would they want one over the other?
Well, that is the question that we are taking to community in July at our 9 public hearings. Portlanders will ultimately decide how we are going to elect our city council for the next decade. And the reason why we are moving forward with these 3 maps is to get that feedback from Portlanders. How do you want to be represented? How do you want your community represented? How do you feel about the common themes across these maps, and what differences feel most impactful to you? So ultimately, the map that we as a commission will vote on will be determined by what we hear from Portlanders at our public hearings next month.
Have you heard any feedback yet so far?
We have heard tremendous feedback thus far. We have reviewed over 200 different map concepts. We've received public testimony, public comment. We've engaged in community conversations with leaders all across the city, and we have gotten a lot of positive feedback on, for example, the way these maps are uplifting representation in East Portland, and the way these maps preserve historic albina within the North Portland district. And we're looking forward to getting additional feedback to weigh other considerations. For example, there are active conversations going on about the West Side District and what the common interests are or may be on that part of our city.
So looking at this for, citizens of Portland, people who, I guess everybody in Portland will be affected by this in some way, shape, or form, especially people who are maybe on some of those borders where it could go one way or another. What are the factors that you think people should consider when deciding which map would be the best?
Well, we are asking Portlanders that question. What the issues and priorities that they uplift to us is ultimately what we'll have to consider and contend with as we arrive at a final map.
So it really is just taking the feedback from everybody, and then you're going to take that into consideration. No suggestions or anything like that from the top down.
Absolutely. We have been guided by the voice of community from the start of this process, and it is up to community to drive this process home and decide how we want to elect our city council for the next decade.
So, which is very important for the next decade, like you just mentioned there, how city council will be elected for the next decade. So, for the feedback that you're looking, give us a little rundown of that as far as how people can provide their feedback for these districts.
Absolutely. So this is a historic moment for the city and a tremendous opportunity for Portlanders to shape the future of City Hall. So from July 5th to July 16th, we are hosting 2 public hearings in each of the 4 proposed districts, as well as 1 citywide virtual hearing for a total of 9. And Portlanders can find the dates and locations for those hearings on portland.gov/transition. And we are so very excited to be going out into community to hear from Portlanders about how they want to be represented.
Anything else that you want people to know about this? This is a very important position. How have you felt personally being on the co-chair of this?
Well, one thing I want to make abundantly clear to Portlanders is that, we have been well advised from the beginning of this process that there really is no perfect map. And having worked with my fellow commissioners these last few months, I do believe that if there was a perfect map, this group of folks would have found it. It has just been a tremendous honor and privilege to work alongside folks who care so deeply and believe in our city. And we are so excited to be out in community to finalize this map for the city.
All right. Well, Josh, thank you very much for joining us and explaining this a little bit more to anybody who doesn't, quite understand how this is going to be working, how they can provide their feedback, understanding some of the ramifications and some of the things to consider when it comes to it. So I appreciate you joining us here on Fox 12 Now.
Thank you so much.
All right. There we go. Learning a lot right there just about how this redistricting is going to work. And again, for the next 10 years, that's how city council is going to be elected. So that is very important to everyone here. So something to consider. And if you want to give feedback, Josh gave us the way to do that. And thanks for joining us here for Fox 12 Now. Again, I'm Greg Nibbler. We're live here every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Coming up at 1:30 p.m., I've got Eric G., who's going to be joining us on the show with some tips and tricks for home repairs and talking about this weekend's new episode of Around the House Northwest. So come right back for that. We're going to sign off right now. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.